The Man God, the founder of the Empire, Sigmar Heldenhammer was a king when humanity was split into tribes barely less barbaric than the orcs, when dreams of civilization, of holding a candle to the dwarves and elves were just that, dreams. But, as one man, Sigmar united the tribes, beat back the orcs and other creatures plaguing the land, and established the territory that we call the Empire in Warhammer Fantasy. But, what if he didn't do any of that? What if Sigmar, the man who became a god, was born elsewhere? What if he was born in the far north, the Chaos Wastes, where mothers smother their children in the cold of winter if they're not torn apart by the Chaos-touched beasts roaming the land? In a place so harsh, what could Sigmar do? Greetings once more, Ghouls and Gals. Today, I have another strange and very unlikely proposition for you, asking what if Sigmar was born in the distant lands of Norska rather than in Reichdorf, the settlement that would eventually become the Empire capital of Altdorf. Sigmar isn't just some dude who rose to prominence, so in order for us to get started laying the groundwork in this alternate world, we'll try to make his birth as similar to that of the original Sigmar as possible. He'll be born under a twin-tailed comet, which could signal greatness or great darkness coming to the world, and he'll also be born to a king. The original Sigmar learned that the world was harsh because of the other creatures populating it. Orcs roamed the lands alongside beastmen and marauders, but if they did not, then humanity could live in peace. That's not the case in the far north. Mutations threaten every child's quality of life, the tribes war heavily among themselves, and there's no guarantee you'll survive each day, especially as a child. Growing up in such an environment would make this Sigmar bitter, especially when he hears of fertile lands down south, and the human tribes that refuse to let any share them. Of course, to the tribes of men in the Empire, the Northmen are to be feared and fought. They are unruly, savage, even compared to the primitive societies of the Umbrians and other clans. This sets the Norscan-born Sigmar on a collision course with the Empire, especially when his father is killed by the Umbrians. It's worth mentioning here that in the original lore, Sigmar was off fighting Norskans as much as he was beastmen and orcs. He had a great feud with a Northman called Cormac Bloodaxe, who threatened the Empire time and time again. So in this version, basically Sigmar starts his story taking on a similar role. Like Cormac, his father was taken down by the men believing themselves better than the Northern Cousins, which sets him on a path to clash with the men of the Empire. In the Empire, without Sigmar things will be worse. Without Sigmar, the Dwarf King Kurgan Ironbeard wouldn't have his caravan saved, meaning the dwarves wouldn't find themselves in debt to the men of the Empire. Also, without Sigmar, the Umbrians and other tribes would really struggle to unite. Sure, they had some common causes, such as fighting against the orcs and goblins pillaging their lands, but without one man to unite them all, they would only forge temporary alliances at best. Think about the Empire of Karl Franz's time, and try to convince me it would unite without the central power and history around Sigmar. Religion too would be massively different, as instead of worshipping the man god, you would have various cults of Ulrich, Tal and more taking precedence, with it being likely that the different Empire provinces would choose different gods. Or you would see one tribe take dominance by force, making everyone a Middenlander or something like that. Essentially, without Sigmar, for at least a while, you have a stagnated empire, one that could be entirely eclipsed by other human civilizations. So, back in Norska, what does this all mean for the alternate Sigmar? Well, quite a lot actually. If the Empire isn't united under one figure, that makes it a lot weaker, and as in his Empire counterpart, the Norscan Sigmar also sees unification as necessary to advance Norska any further. He does not wish to see it on the ice anymore, and so reaches out to the Tong, the Hung, the Kurgans, and the other tribes of the Norse, hoping they will gather under his banner to fight a common enemy, and take the fertile lands to the south. Mostly, the other tribes laugh in Sigmar's face. Why should they cede power to a pup who has no battle experience? It's a good question, and one that Sigmar doesn't have an answer to. He is a strong young man, capable of great many things, but he's not sure he could fight all of the tribe leaders and force them to submit. At least, not without a great weapon at his hip. And so, using what little his tribe has, Sigmar contacts the Norse dwarfs, asking them to make him a weapon greater than that of any man. Sigmar's tribe will go hungry because of this, but they believe in his vision, in his hope that one day they'll see the green grasses of the Empire. The Norse dwarves are not overly fond of the Norskans, but they are willing to trade with the more peaceful tribes, and so this Sigmar does not get his hands on Galmaraz, a hammer with which to forge an empire. Instead, he is given a great axe, which we'll call Galmarax, because I love puns and can already hear the groans with which that name was met. The axe is not for creating his own empire, but for cutting down the tribes and cities of the south, as well as those that would defy him in the north. With determination in his eyes, Sigmar once more requests that the other Norskans unite under his banner. Those that follow him are met with open arms, whereas those that challenge him, whether they have 10 men or 10,000, meet their end by Galmarax. Remember, this is a harsher Sigmar, one who has absolutely no time for his enemies. They may be his fellow Norskans, but if they believe they are his better, they shall soon find out they are not. With a formidable force now united under his banner, including the wrangled creatures of the icy north, Sigmar is ready. Similar to Malekith in the end times, he and his people abandon their homes, taking everything they can with them on ships. Sigmar shall claim the land his father was denied, and free his people from their bitterly cold cages. With the strength of a Norska unified, Sigmar bashes his way through the north of what we'd know as the Empire, slapping down the divided tribes who stand against him. He establishes a foothold in what we'd call Nordland, allowing his people to develop settlements and farms upon the ruins of the folk who came before. While this is happening, Sigmar travels further south, wanting to claim even more lands. However, as we know, thanks to there being no unified empire in this timeline, this also means that there are a lot of beastmen and orcs to contend with, alongside the other men that Sigmar has come to defeat. Using his diplomatic brain once more, Sigmar manages to create unsteady alliances with some of the northern provinces he's not yet raided, so that he can cut a path through the green tides to the south. While he is an invader, Sigmar is an extraordinarily strong foe, and as we know throughout Warhammer's history as well as our own, some people are perfectly fine to live under the boot of their invader, so long as it means they get to live another day. Sigmar is not completely infallible though, and before long he finds that the true threat to his invasion comes from within. After brokering peace deals with the northern tribes of the Empire, Sigmar finds dissension coming from within, as the leaders of the Norskans begin to doubt his leadership, thinking him weak. They also can't help but fight amongst themselves for land, spoils, slaves, and all that comes with raiding. Before Sigmar can even reach Reichdorf, he finds himself putting out more fires than he is starting. Unlike when the original Sigmar united the tribes of the Empire, this Sigmar didn't already have sword oaths to rely on and wasn't dealing with a society willing to unite. Despite their harsher living conditions, the Norskans don't have orcs and beastmen in vast numbers to fight against, and are pretty much the dominant force in their own space, especially with the powers of chaos at hand. This gives the Umbarans and other tribes a chance to push Sigmar back. Seeing the threat he has become, many tribes end up uniting to shove Sigmar back out into the northern wastes, but he will not fall so easily. For months, Sigmar and the tribes of the Empire fight, but it's clear who is going to come out on top. Despite his own personal strength from conquering the other tribes of the Norskans, Sigmar simply doesn't have enough troops to hold out, and so he organises a peace meeting with the Umbarans, carving out Nordland for himself and promising not to invade their settlements in turn. It's not the total domination Norscan Sigmar had hoped for, and he won't be crowned emperor, but he hopes that now he can lay his axe down and start to build something new instead. Sadly though, the setting is called Warhammer, not Farmhammer, and the peace in the north doesn't last long. Angered by the peace, the descendants of the tribesmen Sigmar killed come and raid the farms he's established in the Nordland. Seeing the peace betrayed sends Sigmar into a rage like which he's never felt before. Men, women and children fall by his blade and his troops are whipped up into a blood frenzy. Sigmar doesn't know it, but he has accidentally given in to the thirst of Khorne. Through this short moment, chaos erupts within the Norskans, turning men into mutated demons and shoveling blessings upon those ready to accept them. Sigmar has always known of chaos and always wished to resist it, but his rage now knows no bounds, and he sets his sights on Middenheim, Reichdorf, and any other city that would dare stand in his way. Showing himself to be much more than a skilled diplomat, Sigmar's men follow him with new fervour, and with the Chaos Gods at his back too, there seems to be no power in the Empire that can stop him. That is, until Nagash travels north. During Sigmar's reign in the original lore, Nagash and the Man God have an epic clash, and so I don't see why we wouldn't go for something similar here. When Sigmar and Nagash fight once more, the regular people of the Empire largely just stay out of it. None of them can hope to match the powers of Chaos and the Undead, and they just hope they'll destroy each other. Nagash is more than a worthy challenge for Sigmar's army, decimating much of it only to force his men to rise again and attack their allies. Against this terrifying foe, Sigmar sees his trusted allies given fully to Chaos, making themselves greater demons to try and take down the sorcerer, but it is to no avail. Nagash banishes demon after demon back into the realms of chaos, but with each mighty foe he strikes down, he grows weaker, to the point where Sigmar can challenge him in single combat, and he manages to just barely defeat the Supreme Necromancer, but in battle he suffers a mortal wound, having to be carried away by his men, who retreat back into Nordland. Once more, they aren't safe there for long, as after standing by for far too long, the dwarves have finally decided to take action. They don't have a debt to the men of the Empire, but they do not want to see chaos or death take over the land, and so they take the remaining tribes under their wing and boot Sigmar's lot back to the northern wastes. While he's out of commission, Sigmar is visited by the Chaos Gods. They tell him that as a man he has failed, but as a demon prince he could bring about the end of order, much earlier than they anticipated. Sigmar has seen what happens to his people when they give in to chaos. He has tasted that foul water himself, and he will not have the Norskans become slaves to chaos, not while he still breathes. With his wound still ailing him, Sigmar calls a meeting of his united tribes, telling them not to fall to chaos. Those loyal to him honour his wishes, while the rest, those who have tasted the power and want more, leave to forge their own tribes again. The next night, Sigmar is visited once more by the Chaos Gods, but this time they seek to end him and not tempt him. Sigmar knew this would happen, and despite him being damned to an eternity of torture, he would rather that than see his people live in eternal servitude to the ruinous powers. When Sigmar is nowhere to be found in the morning, rumours spread of what really happened to him, but a large chunk of people realise the sacrifice he's made and honour his lord for it. Just as in the Empire, in Norska, Sigmar leaves his people behind, and while he may not have ascended to godhood, he begins a cult that seeks to forever change the future of Norska. And that wraps up our alternate timeline of Sigmar being born in Norska. This was a bit of a tricky one to theorise without just doing direct parallels and making Sigmar win the Empire again just as an invader. Let me know how you think I did, and I'll see you next time. Ghouls and Gals?